The desert wind howled across the open sands, carrying with it a dry heat that clung to the skin of the workers. For days they had been digging under the burning sun, pushing away the endless layers of sand that seemed to swallow their efforts. The leader of the expedition, Marin, stood at the edge of the pit, scanning the work with sharp eyes. His clothes were dusty, his throat dry, yet his spirit carried a quiet fire that would not let him rest until the mystery hidden beneath was revealed. The team had come here after following ancient maps and half-buried legends that spoke of a tomb unlike any other. It was said to belong to a forgotten pharaoh, one whose tomb was not marked by stone pyramids or carved pillars but instead buried deep in shifting dunes where no one dared to tread. The locals had whispered of it with fear. They called it the Fire Tomb and claimed no man who entered it ever returned. For a long time Marin believed it was only myth, but now his boots stood on the edge of proof. His workers had uncovered something unusual. Beneath the sand was not the simple stonework of common burial sites but a wide slab of black rock, fused smooth as if shaped by fire. It was cold in appearance, yet when Marin reached out and touched it, the surface felt strangely warm, like sun-heated metal. The others drew back when he placed his hand upon it. Some murmured in their own language, making signs to ward off misfortune. One older man spoke directly to Marin, shaking his head with firm warning. "The fire inside still lives. Leave it buried. No gold is worth your life." But Marin only nodded politely and did not step away. His mind was too curious, too determined. He had spent his whole life chasing forgotten truths, chasing stories hidden under sand and stone. He could not stop now. With steady voice he ordered his team to keep clearing. They used brushes and chisels until more of the slab was revealed. Slowly, strange markings came into view. At first they looked like carvings of flames twisting across the surface, but as the dust was swept away, it was clear they were not carved by human hands. The lines seemed to shimmer faintly, as though light moved beneath the rock itself. Ravi, the youngest member of the team, crouched near the edge of the markings. His wide eyes reflected the strange glow. "It looks like fire trapped inside," he whispered. He was only a student, but his excitement often outran his fear. "This isn't like any tomb I've ever read about." Marin placed a steady hand on the young man's shoulder. "No. This is different. This is something old, older than the kingdoms we know." The sun was sinking low, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold. The desert was cooling, but the slab beneath their feet seemed to grow warmer. A faint hum began to rise, so soft that only those closest could hear it. Some of the workers threw down their tools and refused to continue. They climbed out of the pit, shouting that the dead were stirring. By nightfall, only Marin, Ravi, Nia, and two others remained. Nia was an engineer, her sharp mind always looking for patterns and answers. She ran her hands across the strange surface, frowning. "This is not natural rock. It feels more like forged material. As if someone melted stone into shape. And these patterns, look here, they almost look like circuits." Her words carried a weight none could ignore. Circuits were the veins of machines, not tombs. The group gathered around as Marin lit a lantern and set it near the center. The warm glow of firelight reflected off the markings, and to their shock the lines pulsed in response, as if alive. The slab trembled faintly, dust rising from its edges. Ravi gasped and stepped back. "It is opening." With a slow grinding sound, the black rock began to split down the center. A thin line of fiery light cut across the surface. Sand poured into the gap, and warm air rushed upward carrying the smell of ash long buried. The workers who had stayed above shouted in terror, refusing to watch. Marin felt his heart pound, but he did not move away. He raised his lantern higher and leaned over the widening gap. Stone shifted and slid aside until a dark passage stretched beneath them, its walls glowing faintly with the same fire-like patterns. The air was heavy, yet not choking. It carried heat, but also a strange energy that made the skin prickle. "This is it," Marin said, his voice calm though his hands shook slightly. "The door to the fire tomb." Ravi swallowed hard. "Are we really going inside?" Marin looked at each of them in turn. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and wonder. He knew every one of them had dreamed of discoveries like this, but dreaming and standing before the unknown were two very different things. He placed the lantern at the edge and straightened his shoulders. "We came here for answers. The stories spoke of gold, of fire, of something that never died. If we turn away now, we may never see it again. I will go in. Any who wish to follow may come with me. Any who wish to stay will not be judged." Silence held for a moment. Then Nia stepped forward. "I will go." Ravi hesitated, but then he too nodded. "I cannot leave without knowing." The others exchanged uneasy looks but remained at the surface. Marin did not force them. He took a deep breath and stepped toward the glowing passage. The fire-lit markings stretched downward, inviting and threatening at the same time. The desert night spread above them, vast and silent, but Marin's eyes were fixed only on the tomb below. As his foot crossed the threshold, a whisper seemed to echo through the stone. Not words, not sound, but something deeper, as if the tomb itself recognized the presence of the living. And so began their descent into the Pharaoh's fire tomb, where secrets waited that had burned bright for thousands of years, untouched by time. The air inside the passage pressed heavy on their lungs. Heat rose in faint waves from the walls, and the strange lines of fire seemed to pulse like a heartbeat guiding them forward. Marin held the lantern high though the glow of the walls was enough to see. Behind him walked Nia with sharp eyes fixed on every surface, and Ravi followed, his steps slow but unwilling to turn back. The descent led them into a vast chamber unlike anything they had seen in ancient ruins before. The floor was coated in fine gray ash that crumbled under their boots. The walls were curved and smooth, shaped not by chisels but by something far more advanced. Across the surface ran endless streams of glowing lines, flowing into patterns that looked almost alive. Ravi crouched down and scooped a handful of ash. It sifted through his fingers like soft dust, but when it touched the ground again, tiny sparks flickered as if fire slept inside every grain. His eyes widened. "This is not normal ash. It feels alive." Nia bent beside him and brushed the floor with a careful hand. "No, not alive. It is reacting to us, or maybe to the air we bring in. Something in this place has been waiting." She looked up at the walls where murals stretched from floor to ceiling. At first glance they seemed to be carvings of men in crowns, chariots, and temples, but as Marin raised his lantern closer, the truth became clear. The figures were not men but tall beings with elongated faces, holding strange devices in their hands. Above them were images of the sky filled with ships that burned like stars. Marin traced the lines with his eyes, his voice low. "These are not stories of gods. These are records. Whoever built this tomb wanted us to know." The chamber grew silent, the weight of revelation pressing down on them. The locals had spoken of fire that never died, but this was something greater than gold or curses. This was proof that the tomb was no ordinary burial. As they studied the walls, the ash beneath their feet began to stir. It swirled slowly, almost like water catching a hidden current. Marin stepped back, hand instinctively going to his side though he carried no weapon. The lantern flickered as a low hum filled the chamber. From the center of the floor, shapes began to rise. The ash gathered itself into tall forms, each taking the shape of armored figures. They were not solid but outlines made of dust and fire. Their faces bore the mask of pharaohs, and in their hands they carried long spears glowing with faint heat. Ravi froze. Guardians. The word echoed with weight. The figures did not advance, but their heads turned in unison toward the humans. A single voice rumbled through the chamber though none of the guardians moved their mouths. The sound was deep and resonant, vibrating through bone and stone alike. Only the flame-bearers may walk forward. Marin felt the words not only in his ears but inside his mind, as if something reached through thought itself. He steadied his breathing. The chamber held its silence as the ash guardians stood unmoving, their fiery outlines flickering like torches in the dark. The air was hot and heavy, filled with the strange hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Marin felt sweat run down his face, but he kept his gaze steady on the nearest figure. He had walked into tombs before, faced dangers of traps and collapsing stone, but nothing compared to this. These were not statues. They were something more. Nia stepped closer, her sharp eyes fixed on the glowing lines that ran across the floor. She noticed how every pulse of light connected to the guardian's feet. It was as though they were not truly alive but instead born from the energy that flowed through the tomb. She spoke with calm precision. They are not here to kill us. They are here to test us. Ravi's hands shook as he clutched his small satchel. His voice was thin with fear. What if we fail the test? What happens then? Marin placed a steady hand on his shoulder. Then we learn why this tomb has stayed hidden so long. But we did not come this far to turn back. As if responding to his words, the tallest of the guardians moved. Its body shimmered as ash flowed upward, making its form sharper and stronger. It raised its spear and slammed it against the ground. The sound cracked through the chamber like thunder, and the glowing lines on the walls flared brighter. The murals of ships and strange beings seemed to come alive, their carved eyes glowing with faint fire. Then the guardian spoke again, its voice deep and echoing inside their minds. Prove the flame within. Prove you are not hollow. The floor shifted beneath them. The ash scattered into spirals, revealing a hidden pathway leading deeper into the tomb. The guardians stepped aside, forming a corridor of living fire. They did not vanish but stood watch, their heads slowly turning to follow the humans' every step. Marin motioned with his hand. Stay close. Do not run. We move as one. Together, they stepped forward. The air grew hotter with every pace, yet it was not unbearable. It was as if the tomb itself was measuring them, pressing against their spirits rather than their bodies. As they walked, Ravi whispered, his eyes darting between the guardians. Why us? Why does it call us flame bearers? We are only people. Marin's answer came with a firm voice. Perhaps that is what we must prove. That the fire in us is not treasure, not power, but the will to endure. The path led them into another hall, smaller but more focused. In the center stood a towering statue of a pharaoh made not of stone but of pure gold. Its surface gleamed even in the dim light, and in its eyes burned twin flames that never wavered. This was no illusion of ash. This was solid and real. The statue shifted. Gold scraped against gold as its head turned slowly, and the fire in its eyes grew brighter. The walls shook as it stepped forward, each movement heavy with power. Unlike the Ash Guardians, this one carried presence, a true guardian of the tomb. Ravi stumbled back, his voice breaking. It moves, it is alive. Marin forced himself to remain calm though his heart pounded in his chest. He raised his lantern high, the small flame looking pitiful against the golden figure. Yet when the guardian's gaze fell upon it, the flames in its eyes softened. It spoke, and this time the words were clear, like echoes of an ancient tongue shaped into thought. Fire is life, fire is will, fire is memory. You who walk this path must show that you carry the flame. The guardian lowered its great hand. In its palm burned a small ember, glowing red and gold. It extended the hand toward Marin, waiting. Nia leaned closer and whispered urgently. It wants you to take it. But be careful. It may be more than fire. It could be energy, memory, even a key. Marin hesitated only a moment before he reached out. His fingers brushed the ember, and heat surged into him like a river of light. For an instant he saw visions, fields of green under alien skies, ships crossing stars, a being with a golden crown speaking to people who bowed in awe. Then it was gone, and he stood once more in the chamber, the ember now glowing in his hand. The golden guardian stepped back, its flames dimming as though satisfied. It raised its voice once more. The flame is past. Walk further. Carry it with honor. Marin closed his hand around the ember. It did not burn him now, though he could feel it pulsing like a second heartbeat. He looked at his companions, seeing both fear and wonder on their faces. Ravi whispered, unable to look away from Marin's hand. You are the bearer now. Nia's voice was steady but filled with awe. And that means the tomb accepts you. The guardian turned and returned to its place at the center, freezing once again into stillness. The flames in its eyes faded but did not die. It would wait for the next worthy traveler, perhaps in another 1,000 years. Marin breathed deeply, the ember still glowing faintly in his palm. The weight of it was not heavy, yet he felt its importance pressing against his soul. He raised his head toward the passage that opened behind the statue. More darkness stretched ahead, filled with promise and danger. Come, he said softly, his voice carrying quiet strength. The fire guides us now. Together they stepped past the golden guardian and deeper into the tomb, unaware of the trials that still awaited them in the halls beyond. The passage behind the golden guardian stretched like the throat of some great beast, narrow and curving downward. The glow of the fire lines guided their steps, pulsing softly as if marking a path. Marin still held the ember, its faint light steady in his hand. He felt its warmth not only in his palm but also in his chest, as though it had settled inside him. Ravi walked close at his side, his eyes locked on the ember with both fascination and unease. It looks alive, he whispered. Like it knows we are here. Nia, walking just behind them, kept her gaze on the walls. She traced the patterns with her eyes, noting how the streams of light branched and connected like rivers. It is more than alive, she said firmly. This entire place runs on that fire. The walls, the guardians, even the air we breathe, it all feeds from the same source. It is a system, not a tomb. Her words stirred silence among them. They had come searching for burial riches and instead found themselves inside something built like a machine, hidden under desert sands for countless ages. The passage opened into another chamber, smaller but filled with strange devices. At first, they looked like golden statues of animals, lions, birds, and serpents, but as they stepped closer, Nia realized they were not statues at all. They were machines, their bodies shaped from metal that gleamed even in the dim light. Each one was connected to the walls through glowing lines that pulsed like veins. Ravi gasped, his voice trembling with wonder. These are not treasures. They are machines from long ago. Marin approached one of the lion-shaped constructs. Its eyes were dark, yet the body was warm to the touch. He pulled his hand back quickly, unsure if it would spring to life like the guardians before. But it remained still, humming faintly, as if asleep. Nia knelt beside a serpent-shaped machine. Her fingers traced the joints along its golden scales. The design is far beyond us. Look here, each piece is linked to the next by some kind of magnetic force. There is no wear, no rust. It has been waiting, untouched, for centuries. She looked up at Marin, her eyes sharp. This is not a tomb. This is a vault. A place where knowledge was hidden, locked away from the world. Marin tightened his grip on the ember. The visions he had seen earlier flickered again in his memory, ships in the sky, a crowned figure teaching people how to build with fire. Perhaps this was where those teachings had been stored. Perhaps this was the true treasure, not gold but wisdom. Ravi wandered toward the far end of the chamber where a large panel stood, covered in carvings. He brushed away dust and gasped. These symbols, they look like stars. Constellations. And here this one matches the desert sky. Marin joined him and studied the panel. Indeed, the shapes carved into the surface resembled the stars they had seen countless nights while camping in the sands. But alongside familiar constellations were others, strange and unfamiliar, stretching into patterns that could only belong to distant skies. It is a map, Marin said slowly, awe-filling his voice. A map of more than this world. The ember in his hand pulsed, and the carvings glowed faintly as if reacting. The unknown constellations lit up in sequence, one after another, until they formed a path leading to a single shining mark. Nia stepped forward, her face pale with wonder. It is pointing to a star. Whoever built this tomb came from there. They left this behind for us to find. The three of them stood in silence, the truth pressing upon them. The Pharaoh of Fire was not merely a ruler but a traveler from another world. He had brought knowledge, perhaps even guided the rise of early kingdoms, before sealing his legacy in this hidden vault. Suddenly, the machine stirred. The serpent's golden body shivered, its scales rattling softly. The lion lifted its head, eyes flaring with dull red light. The chamber trembled as the constructs came alive, not hostile but watchful. Ravi stumbled back in fear. They are waking. Why now? Marin held the ember higher, and at once the machines froze, their eyes dimming again. The tremor faded, leaving silence. The ember's glow softened as if calming the restless guardians. Nia's voice was steady though her breath was quick. They answer to the flame. It is a key, perhaps even a command. Whoever holds it has the right to walk here. Marin lowered his hands slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavier upon him. This was no simple discovery. This was a gift, and perhaps also a warning. The chamber quieted again, leaving only the hum of hidden power. Marin turned to his companions, his voice firm though his eyes betrayed his awe. We must go deeper. If this place is a vault, then the heart of it will hold the greatest truth. We cannot stop here. Nia nodded, though her face showed caution. Ravi hesitated, fear and wonder battling in his eyes, but at last he gave a small nod as well. Together, they left the chamber of golden machines and followed the glowing path deeper into the tomb. The ember pulsed in Marin's hand, guiding them forward. They did not know what awaited in the halls ahead, but one truth was already clear. The fire was not simply legend. It was power, memory, and perhaps destiny, and now it was in their hands. The new passage was narrow and long, lit by thin streams of glowing fire that crawled like veins across the walls. Marin walked first, holding the ember in his hand. Its pulse was steady, guiding them, but also warning that they had not yet reached the true heart of the tomb. Nia followed close behind, her eyes sharp and curious, while Ravi brought up the rear, glancing back often as if expecting the golden machines to stir again. The air grew hotter with every step. Soon the walls seemed to sweat with heat, and the stone beneath their feet glowed faintly. Ravi pulled at his collar, sweat running down his face. It feels like we are walking into a furnace. Nia studied the patterns on the walls. Not a furnace. A test. The fire is not meant to burn us. It is meant to see if we can endure it. Marin nodded, remembering the words of the guardian, prove the flame within. His hand tightened on the ember. If this was a test, then the tomb was not just protecting treasure but measuring the worth of those who sought it. The passage ended in a great door of gold and stone. Carved flames stretched across it, and in the center was a hollow space shaped like a hand. Marin lifted the ember, and at once the space glowed. He pressed the ember into the hollow, and the door rumbled open, sending waves of heat rolling out. Beyond the door lay a chamber unlike the others. Fire burned in long troughs along the walls, casting a harsh glow across the floor. The ground was broken into uneven platforms, separated by wide gaps filled with burning sand that shimmered like molten glass. Across the chamber lay another door, carved with the same flame markings. Ravi stared in disbelief. How are we supposed to cross that? Marin studied the platforms. Some looked stable, while others shifted slightly, ready to sink if touched. It was a path of danger, designed to test not only strength but also judgment. He stepped forward first. The ember in his hand pulsed, and the nearest platform glowed faintly as if marking his step. He leapt across and landed safely. The stone shook but held firm. He turned back to Nia and Ravi. Follow me. Step where I step. Do not hesitate. Nia followed, her movements steady and precise. She landed beside Marin without trouble. Ravi hesitated, staring at the burning sand below. Heat rose like a wall against his face, and fear clutched his chest. You can do this, Marin called. The fire is only testing you. It cannot take what you will not give. Ravi drew a sharp breath, then leapt. He landed hard, slipping slightly, but Nia caught his arm and pulled him to safety. His heart pounded, but he managed a shaky nod. I will keep going. Step by step, they crossed the chamber. The fire seemed to grow hotter with every leap, burning against their skin and filling their lungs with heavy air. Once, Ravi misjudged his landing, and the stone cracked beneath him. He scrambled back just as it sank into the burning sand. Fear filled his eyes, but Marin's steady hand pulled him up again. Do not think of falling, Marin said firmly. Think only of moving forward. The flame is not here to destroy us. It is here to see if we have the will to rise. With each test, Ravi grew stronger. His leaps Malik and his team stood in silence as the chamber lit with fire-like energy. The golden flames did not burn the stone, yet they filled the air with heavy heat and strange sound, like whispers rising from the walls. The walls themselves seemed alive, shifting faintly as if the carvings were moving. Symbols of stars, suns, and eyes opened across the surface. Ayla clutched her pack tightly. She was pale but steady. This is not just history. It is living power. The Pharaoh did not die. He left part of himself here. Sarin turned slowly in the chamber, his eyes fixed on the sarcophagus. If that is true, then maybe he can rise again. And maybe he does not want us here. Malik took a step closer to the golden sarcophagus. The firelight painted his face in shifting shadows. He felt warmth pressing against his skin, but it was not painful. Instead, it felt heavy, like the weight of countless years resting on his shoulders. We came for knowledge. Not for his wrath. But we cannot leave without understanding this secret. Before anyone could answer, the sarcophagus opened with a grinding sound. Gold dust lifted into the air, forming shapes that almost looked human. The form of a tall figure appeared, wrapped not in cloth but in fire. The shape of a crown glowed above its head. The team froze. The figure raised one hand, and the flames calmed. It did not speak in words, but a voice filled their minds. Who enters my fire tomb without kneeling? Malik felt his heart pound, but he stood tall. We are explorers. We seek truth. We do not come as thieves. We come as witnesses. The fire figure tilted its head. The crown blazed brighter. Witnesses to what? To the fall of a king? To the hunger of gold? To the light that still burns when all else is dust. The room shook slightly. Dust fell from the ceiling, yet the fire kept everything intact. Ayla slowly stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. We believe you are not only a pharaoh. You were more. You held power beyond men. That power is still alive. You wanted it hidden. But it calls to us now. Why? The fire figure stared at her. The golden flames rippled, and for a moment the figure almost looked like a man with sharp eyes and proud features. Because the time of silence is ending. The stars move again. What I kept buried must rise once more. But not without cost. Malik swallowed hard. His hands curled into fists. He knew this was bigger than treasure, bigger than stories. What cost? He asked. The figure pointed toward him. Blood. Will. Loyalty. The fire chooses not the weak. You stand here because it allowed you. But if you fail, you will join the sand and be forgotten. The fire swirled, pulling toward the sarcophagus again. In the flames, images appeared. Armies marching under banners of fire. Ships sailing across skies filled with stars. Worlds burning and rebuilding. Malik saw a vision of himself holding a torch, guiding others through endless night. He staggered back, his breath fast. The vision faded, but the fire's voice remained. One must carry the flame. It cannot die. If it dies, the gold turns to ash and the world loses its light. The chamber fell silent again. The figure stepped back into the sarcophagus, but the fire did not vanish. It flowed instead into the walls, leaving the sarcophagus empty but glowing like a sun. Ayla placed a hand on Malik's arm. It spoke to you. You saw something, didn't you? Malik nodded slowly, still shaking. It showed me, the flame passing to someone. A duty. Maybe to me. Maybe to us. But I felt the weight. It is heavy, Ayla. Heavier than stone. Saran shook his head, backing toward the door. This is madness. We came for discovery, not to become servants of an ancient fire king. If you want to carry his flame, Malik, do it alone. I will not. The air trembled at his words. The golden fire pulsed violently, almost like a heartbeat. The walls shook again, and the entrance behind them began to close. Ayla shouted, it heard him. The tomb reacts to doubt. We have to decide now. Malik's voice rose above the rumble. Then we stand together or not at all. This flame cannot be taken by force. It must be chosen. The fire stilled, waiting, almost listening. Malik looked at his team, his chest tight. I will take the risk. I will carry the Pharaoh's flame. But I ask you, stand with me. If we divide, this tomb will consume us. The silence stretched. Saren's jaw tightened, torn between fear and pride. Ayla's eyes burned with steady light. She finally said, then we stand. The fire flared, surrounding them all. For a moment, they felt as if their hearts were on fire, not in pain but in strength. The tomb roared like a furnace, then settled into stillness. The golden sarcophagus closed itself, sealing the fire inside once more. The team stood breathing hard, but alive. The whispers faded, leaving only silence. Malik knew then, the fire had accepted them. But the true test was still ahead. The tomb lay in silence after the fire sank back into the golden sarcophagus. Malik stood in the center of the chamber, breathing heavily, his skin still warm from the flames that had surrounded them. His heart beat fast, but there was a strange calm inside him. He felt a quiet strength, as if part of the fire had taken root within. Ayla slowly lowered her hand from his arm. She was trembling but her voice was steady. It accepted you, Malik. The fire did not burn you. It gave you something instead. Saren leaned against the wall, his face pale. Or it marked him. We don't even know what that fire is. Maybe we walk straight into a curse. Malik looked down at his hands. They glowed faintly in the dim light, not with flame but with a golden shimmer that pulsed like a heartbeat. He closed his fists and the light faded. I don't think it is a curse. I think it is a burden. And a choice. The walls of the tomb shifted again, revealing a new passage. Stone blocks slid apart with deep grinding sounds, forming a long hallway that led upward. At the far end, a faint light shone as if from the desert above. Ayla stared at it with wide eyes. The tomb is opening. It wants us to leave now. Saren shook his head, frustration heavy in his voice. Leave? After everything we've seen, after fire spirits and voices in our minds. You think it will let us walk out like nothing happened? Malik did not answer at first. He stepped forward, testing the ground. The floor was solid, no tricks, no traps. The golden shimmer within him pulsed again, and the fire voice echoed faintly in his mind. Carry the flame. Protect it. Share its light when darkness rises. He turned to his team. We are meant to leave. Not with gold, not with treasure, but with knowledge. The fire is not just for me. It is for us all. And maybe for the world outside. They followed the passage, step by step, until the desert air touched their faces. The wind was cool, carrying the scent of sand and stars. The night sky spread above them, wide and endless. The tomb's entrance sealed itself behind them, leaving only smooth stone as if nothing had ever been there. Saren dropped to his knees, pressing his hands into the sand. We came here as seekers of history. We are leaving as something else entirely. Ayla looked at Malik, her eyes bright in the moonlight. The fire chose you, Malik. What will you do with it? Malik gazed at the stars. He felt the weight of the fire in his chest, a warmth that would never fade. He knew it was more than power. It was a test, a responsibility. I will not keep it locked away. It belongs to the world. The Pharaoh built his tomb to guard it, but now the world has changed. Maybe the fire must rise again, not to rule, but to guide. As they stood in the desert, the ground trembled softly. Far in the distance, lights flickered along the horizon. Not torches, but something brighter, sharper, like energy piercing the night. Ayla's breath caught. Do you see that? It's not natural fire. Malik narrowed his eyes. The lights were moving, spreading, almost like ships in the sky. His heart grew heavy. The fire's warning echoed in his memory. When darkness rises, the flame must burn bright. He clenched his fists. This was no accident. We were called here because something is coming. The fire did not wake for nothing. Sauron rose slowly, his doubt still strong but his voice less harsh. If that is true, then we are standing at the edge of a war we do not understand. And you, Malik, are at its center. Malik nodded. Then I will carry it. I will not let the flame die. The desert wind rose, carrying grains of sand across their faces. The stars burned above them like silent witnesses. For a long moment, the three stood together, bound not by gold or treasure but by something older, something brighter. They had entered the tomb seeking answers from the past. They left with a fire meant for the future. Malik raised his hand to the sky, and for an instant the golden shimmer flashed across his skin. It was a small light against the vast darkness, but it burned steady. He whispered, more to himself than to the others, the Pharaoh's fire still lives. And now, it burns in us. The desert stretched endless before them, and the future waited.